In the previous videos on computer hardware, I was talking about big black box, right? You can see this big black box is now in front of you. This big black box is actually called as CPU cabinet. Now most of the people call it as CPU, okay, but calling it as CPU is not correct, because CPU is just tiny piece present inside this CPU cabinet, okay. So we talked about central processing unit, so that is something called as CPU, but this complete box is called as CPU cabinet. Now in this video we are going to discuss what all components are present inside the CPU cabinet. So let's quickly get started. You can see over here, you can see there is one major green color circuit or green colored plate, okay. So this green color plate is actually called as motherboard. So in previous video we discussed about motherboard. So you can see this is the motherboard, you can see over here, and you can see there are a lot of things attached to this motherboard. So let's discuss what all things are attached to this motherboard. So let's first start with this thing which is present in the center of the motherboard. So this is heat sink which is attached on top of processor. So if I remove this heat sink, then below this heat sink you can see there is going to be a tiny processor. I'm going to show you the motherboard by removing this motherboard from here. I'm going to show you one motherboard, but you can see below this there is a processor, okay. Now processor is designed to do multiple things in a second. It is going to do a lot of stuff in a second, and by doing multiple things in a second it's going to produce a lot of heat, and that's the reason to take the heat away from the processor, this heat sink is attached to the processor. Now below this heat sink you can see there is a fan attached. So this fan is kind of acts to take the heat away from the CPU cabinet. So that is the main purpose of this fan, okay. Now below this fan you can see there's one box present below this fan. This box is called as SMPS, okay. So this is basically used to supply power for the entire CPU cabinet components. So you can see there are multiple wires coming out from this SMPS. These wires are responsible for supplying electricity to all the components which are present over here. Now another important component of the computer system is the storage devices, right? So we have discussed about primary storage devices, secondary storage devices. You can see over here there are two black strips. These two black strips are responsible, or they are the place for attaching our random access memory, which is also our primary storage in our normal computer devices. So these two strips are used to attach primary memory, that is random access memory, okay. Over here you can see there are two more strips. You can use these strips to attach few more devices to the motherboard. And you can see over here there is a small cell which is called as CMOS battery, okay. So in previous video we had a discussion on CMOS battery. So that CMOS battery is present over here, and there are many more components, but right now let's not go in much more detail because we have covered all the major components of the motherboard, okay. Now another major segment of the component is called as input-output devices. So let's see how we connect input-output devices to our computer system or to our motherboard. I'll just turn this CPU cabinet and I'll just show it to you from the back side, so you'll get to know how we connect input-output devices to the CPU cabinet. Okay, so this is the back side of the CPU cabinet. You can see over here there are multiple ports. Okay, you can see these are the audio connectors. There are some USB connector, there is Ethernet connector, there is some HDMI port, and you can see over here there is a connector for power supply. Okay, so this is how the CPU cabinet looks from the back side. And if you observe very carefully, all these components or all these slots are attached to our motherboard. Okay, so if I turn this again, you can see all these connectors are connected to the motherboard. So that's the reason it is called as motherboard, because it connects all the part of the computer system. You can see everything is connected to this motherboard. Processor, input-output devices, your storage, everything is connected with the help of this motherboard. Okay, so this is the motherboard. I'm just giving you a closer look to the motherboard. You can see the same components I just showed you. So you just kind of revise them. Okay, so this is our processor. You can see this green chip is a processor. Okay, I can actually show it to you by just removing this chip from the motherboard. So let me just remove it from here. Yeah, so you can see this is the processor. Okay, so whenever we say I have Intel i5 processor, I have Intel i7 processor, so this is how it looks. Okay, it's a very tiny small piece of electronic. Okay, and this is responsible for all the operations of the computer. This is responsible for executing all your tasks. Okay, it's a very important circuit which is present on the motherboard. And you can see over here, this is the slot for attaching your random access memory, and this is your CMOS battery. Okay, and while showing you the CPU cabinet, I showed you the heatsink which is present on top of processor. So it sits on top of processor. So right now I had detached it so that you can see processor very clearly. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much.